Welcome back to This Week. A state Democratic senator from Memphis and a state Republican representative from Dixon are leading up a caucus of young lawmakers looking to find common ground. In these days of tribal politics, your side and mine, this new approach by Senator Raumesh Akbari and State Representative Michael Curcio is a bold move toward actually getting legislative work done.
I lean very heavily on relationships. I think that you have to step aside from sometimes we just have things we're not going to agree on, right? And for me to continue to hammer you on that or you to do the same, we're not going to change anyone's minds. So let's focus on what we can agree on, which shockingly, people don't believe this. My constituents don't believe this sometimes. It's like 90% of the things that come through the state. The things that we don't agree on are so big, they take all the oxygen out. But focus on things that we can agree on, and then we can move forward together, really putting Tennessee first. And I think that that's how we can make it work.
If we continue to focus on the things that we know we disagree on, then we're just going to be talking in circles for years and not really accomplish much. So what I love, and because one of my, kind of biggest themes in my political career is that if my Democratic friends got everything that they wanted, it wouldn't fix, kind of the major issues facing the nation. If my Republican friends got everything that they wanted, it still wouldn't fix every issue that faces the nation. What we have to all agree on is that we're not going to get everything that we want, and it's going to take electing adults who are willing to be honest and truthful with the American people to say, these problems are complex and they're not going away, and we've got to work together to fix them.
I think when we show a front that says we're inclusive and look, we're working together, and I'm not just going to attack you just because you're a Republican. Like if I'm against a piece of legislation, it's because I truly do not agree with it, not because I don't like it because you're a Republican and you're pushing it. And I also think you have to focus on issues and not people.
My job description is to compromise. I am not a chief executive. Senator Akbari is not governor, nor am I. Our role in the legislature is actually to come together.
What is in this for your party? Because you do have all the power, supermajorities in both legislative chambers, the governor's office, both U.S. Senate seats, 7 of 9 congressional districts, and with all due respect, you don't have to bargain with the senator here. So how do you at least convince your party that you're not necessarily sharing the power, you have the power, but involving the minority party is beneficial for them in the state?
Sure. Well, one point I always like to make is that while I was elected as a Republican, and I am a very proud Republican and have very deeply and sincerely held beliefs that jive with, the tenets of the Republican Party, when I'm serving in my official role, I'm representing all of my constituents, even, constituents who didn't even vote, not only not vote for me, didn't vote at all, right? I mean, I represent close to 70,000 Tennesseans. And, the average Tennessean is working hard every morning. They're waking up. They're putting their kids on a school bus often before it's light outside. Sometimes they don't see them until they get home after dark. And they're working all day, every day to put food on the table, provide for their family, pay their car payment and keep a roof over their families' heads. And they expect us to solve large problems. They don't expect us to see everything through such a partisan lens. Now, that may not be what some of the loudest voices that we hear are saying. Oftentimes, unfortunately, the extremes are who you hear from. It's who you see on social media. It's the soundbite, right? But I think the average, everyday working Tennessean wants to live in a well-managed state.
Healthcare, criminal justice, mass transit, new roads, bridges. Are those the areas you guys think you can work together to find solutions that help everybody in the state? Senator?
Well, definitely. I think especially criminal justice reform, that has been one of the biggest bipartisan issues since I got to the legislature. I think really investing in public schools has been another one. We might have different ideas about how to get there, but that's something that has universal support. But criminal justice reform has been the key. And I think it's just a recognizing of, one, far too much of our budget is devoted to the cost of incarceration, to our penal system, with not as good results as we'd like to have. And I think also we just recognize that, listen, mistakes happen. Things have changed in how we view incarceration. You can be smart on crime. It doesn't necessarily have to just be this blanket, tough, throw people in prison, lock and throw away the key.
we spend now over $1 billion to incarcerate, some, I think is it 60,000 total, individuals. And what are the outcomes that we're getting with that investment? What maybe the average Tennessean doesn't necessarily think about every day, but that Senator Akbari and I spend a lot of time thinking about is that 95% of the folks who are in a Tennessee correctional facility are getting out. So only 5% have a lifetime sentence. So who they are when they get out, when they're your neighbor, when they're in the grocery store with you, has as much to do with their own desire to get better. Certainly, people have to want to help themselves, but it has as much to do with their own desire to get better as it does the programming and the resources that we put into the system. One of my favorite slogans that I actually saw, inside of a prison once was, these people are here for punishment, not to be punished, right? And so it's not our job to try to make their lives miserable. Now, certainly, if you're violent, if you're not going to be, a good, if you're not going to have good behavior while you're there, we're always going to have a hard bed for you. And so I think a really important piece of this is that we've got to decide who we're mad at versus who we're afraid of. Because if you want to be a bad boy or girl in Tennessee, we're always going to have a hard bed for you. So this is not about, being soft on crime or not taking, violent criminals seriously. But it's about being smarter, as my friend Raumesh said, which is, deciphering who we're mad at versus who we're afraid of, so that we've always got space for those folks that we were truly afraid of.
I find it promising that there are 30 such caucuses like this working on bipartisan movements. How important is it that this does happen in blue states and red states in order for it to be successful nationwide, Senator?
Well, I think that it just shows that an effort is being made to move past partisanship and put our country first. And, states are the laboratories of democracies. Most of the action that truly affects everyday life happens in a state legislature. And if we can think in bipartisan terms and think about, what's best for the average Tennessean as opposed to what's best for my political party, I think that we all win.
But a lot of times what gets reported on are when we are disagreeing. And so it makes it seem like all we're doing is fighting, when really, 90+% of what we do is very bipartisan. So I think it is critical that not only do groups like this form across the country, but we actually talk about them. I'm so glad that you're covering this today, is because people need to know that this happens, that we're not just caricatures of ourselves that you see, in print or on the television.
If I give you both a magic wand, what do you hope is the achievement that you're able to produce out of this caucus, Senator?
A magic wand, that is something, right? I hope that relationships continue to develop. We have new members who have come in, and I think the most important thing is when we talk to each other and not at each other. And it's so easy with social media and having limited interaction, especially in this COVID environment, to lose sight of the common humanity we all have and kind of think about, I'm against this person, I'm against that person. So that's what I'm hoping we do. In addition to working together on really great legislation that's going to move Tennessee forward, I hope that we build relationships with each other that's going to help this whole legislative process improve, and that we really respect and honor the person's belief system, but also work on the things that we can agree on.
I think if we can accomplish those big tent things and do it together in a very public way, it shows Tennesseans what true leadership can be like. It's not professional wrestling where we're always sparring every day on television kind of for the show back home, but that we really are coming together with some of our best and brightest minds across the state to try and solve these large, generational problems.
Lastly, do you think you'll be successful? Are there patriots out there, leaders, statesmen out there, like you mentioned, Howard Baker, Estes Kefauver, just to name a couple great Tennesseans, willing to put the greater good above the goal of whatever it takes to get reelected? Senator?
I think so. And I always have hope. I just can't not have it, because if I don't, then I just can't move forward. So I have hope, and I think so. There are people in both chambers, in both parties, that want action and they want positive action. So I know that this will work, and I have hope that it will.
I've made it a point to go around for a lot of these pieces of legislation that hopefully Raumesh and I will both be working on together this year. I've made it a point to not only go around and get my House, Republican leadership as co-sponsors to my bills, but then to walk to the other end of the hallway on the 6th floor to where the Democrat office suites are, and to get those sign-ons as well. It's very important to me to show when we can, and we can't always do that, but to show when we can, we've got, look, a majority of the Democratic caucus and a majority of the Republican caucus signed on to this bill saying this is something that's good for all Tennesseans.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment.